What's up everyone, Blade here, and welcome back to another video of Persona 5 The Phantom X. Inside today's video, guys, we're going to be talking about exactly how team building as well as team rotations are really going to assist you inside this game. Now, not everyone knows team building and team rotations, so obviously this video is going to try to help you guys out to the best of my capability for this. So if you guys do like the video, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and tune in for more videos as per usual. I'm trying to hit around 20k subscribers, or at least work towards it before April 18th being my birthday, as well as the week of TWKR and CN's anniversary. So if any of you guys can obviously just leave comments down below for the algorithm, share it around, like it, sub even more, it really does help me out quite a lot. But with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the actual video. So team building, team comps, and team rotations are all things that are going to help you out inside this game. You started having people who are having problems with either the prior events, the current events, or even when it comes down to SOS, Guild Boss, and or Astrolab. Now, all of this is going to happen as the game does, of course, progress. Certain things get more difficult, and really it's not the difficulty that's hurting you, but it is your teams that can be a little bit problematic, especially if you don't know your rotations. So we're gonna try to break this down to the best of our capabilities here, right? Starting off with our parties. One of the main things that I gotta say when it does come down to a party here is you gotta at least notify, or at least notice, how you're gonna do your DPSs or what you wanna do. If we can just take a little bit of a look of what I'm working with right now here, Justine and Caroline is my DPS, and although we have a DPS logo on Wonder, we're just using this for speed, while our other one is mainly our buffer, seeing it has the supporter here. But we have our DPSer being our Justine and Caroline, our sustainer being our healer, which also could be replaced with a defender, honestly up to you, and then our buffer being Winvast. All this is something that you gotta kind of notice and at least be able to signify whenever you're building the team. Now I do know some of you guys want to run multiple DPSs, and as much as we do love that, there is a way to go about it, but it is highly inefficient. So that is something that you got to come to know. It's not something that we of course gotta like, but when using double DPSs here, your account and or team may very well falter a little bit, but there are ways to get around it. It's just a little bit harder. So when it comes down to our team here, let's make a new one. We're going to use the one that you guys just kind of saw me delete. I was using it as an example earlier, but I messed up on the clip, so we're redoing it here. If we go ahead and look, Wonder's here, we're going to act like he does not exist, right? This character does not exist, so you're technically only looking at 3 slots here. So the first thing you got to know is, what character do you want to have as your DPS? DPS are signified whether it's this single dagger being a single target damager, or the triple little points here being an AoE DPS. For ours, you can choose anyone you really want to, but for mine here, I'm going to be going with On. On is the AoE DPS, and I'd rather get rid of a lot of enemies at once, which she is going to specialize in. Now, after you choose your DPS here, you then have to kind of know not only a little bit of how DPS does work, but then go with what you're missing with. Usually, you're going to want to have a buffer in your team no matter what, and then the last slot can either be a defender or a healer. So buffer wise, something I would probably advise you guys to either do, especially if you're running On, you can either use Cord, being that you want more highlights, or you can use someone like Leon or Winvast, who are helping you out in the attack and crit damage area. So for the video wise, we're going to use our one buffer, which is going to be Leon, seeing he helps us out in attack and crit damage overall, and you guys can immediately see this is our main buffer. Now we have that last slot to go ahead and fill, which is going to be the one thing that a lot of you guys are going to want to pay attention to. Now this last slot can either be what is it called, a debuffer, it could be a shielder, heck, sometimes you can use another buffer, though having that many buffers in your team does contradict itself, so it's not always wise. So your main 2 options are either going to be a debuffer or a healer. Now with this in mind here, whenever I say healer or sustainer, just keep in mind it could also be a defender. It's honestly up to you. But in our aspect here, if I feel like this team is lacking on the healing side, I'm going to go ahead and use Marion. Marion helps us out because obviously we have max HP, meaning we'll live longer. And if I have A1, she gives us extra pin. Always great, can help our damage, and is always great. But on the off chance that I also want to heal but help out our Ann's passive here, I could use Luful, seeing that not only is he able to be a good healer, but if I do attack with him, it still does contribute to our Ann's passive, allowing her to stack up her passive and deal her damage even better. But on the off chance I don't want to use a healer and I want a little bit more damage, let's say from a debuffer, the main thing I'm looking for is a debuffer that has AoE probabilities. Whenever we're going with trying to debuff, especially with an AoE damager, we need to make sure we're able to debuff anyone on the field. So I would end up using someone like Key. Not only does Key debuff everyone on the field here with an AoE problem, but since he is using a fire attack, it will help out Ann's passive, in which I'm going to go off the fact that I think a lot of you guys know how Ann's passive does work, so I shouldn't have to explain it all too much. On the off end that you don't hear, more fire damage that we deal, she builds up these said stacks. When you see that little flame like pulsing in the fight, of course, that means using her skill 3 or her skill 1, but usually her skill 3 is going to do enhanced damage. So this is our team. This is how we have it laid out. Wunder is obviously going to be our like ace in the hole, whether he can just be a buffer, debuffer, it doesn't really matter. Just usually buffer and debuffers are usually what's going to happen here. And we're going to run him with a fire persona. This also will help us out with Ann's passive, in which I'll explain more once we get into battle. But essentially, if I feel like I want more DPS, I would end up using a Navi that helps me out on DPS reasoning. These are anyone like Futaba, Phoebe, Rico, and Okeon. But if I want something like sustainability, let's say I'm getting beaten to a pulp, then Puppet is obviously going to be the character you go for because she puts on a shield on the enemy. Now, or at least a shield on you, not the enemy. But I want to go ahead and go for DPS. So let's go ahead and use Rico, right? So now we have our team set. We know exactly how our team does go, but we have this problem. There's two characters with one on their names, which these signify the speed tuning. Now, speed tuning in this game is going to come down to a whole different video, so I'm not going to go heavily in depth on that. But what I will say is whenever you do have this problem, usually just move the character who you want to go first into the front slot, character who's also tied with them behind them, and obviously it put them in a 1, 2, 3, 4 notion. And on the off chance that you have characters that are like this, that obviously already have their thing signified, it doesn't matter where you move them, they will always be like 3 and 4. So I can move Key up to the first slot, but obviously Key would still be going third. But since our other first character is not in front of this character, Wunder goes first and Leon goes second. The only way, of course, this changes is if in battle they have like a card set on, or is there an outside force influencing their speed tuning, whether it's kits or whether it's card amount of level. But needless to say, keep your guys who you want to be, of course, in first, in the front slot, and so on and so forth. But now we have our whole thing center out. We know exactly how this was work. So where does team rotations come on in? Team rotations is honestly going to come down to, do you know your DPS the best? When it comes down to your other characters, at the end of the day, they're all trying to buff your DPS or assist your DPS in one way or another. Wunder and Leon giving you the buffs that you do need for your main DPS being on, while Kurotani or Key is obviously trying to debuff the enemy, build up your passive to make sure that when it does come down to your DPS's turn, you're dealing the most damage as possible. So with this in mind here, Ann needs, of course, these stacks. These stacks are going to be something called La Vie en Rose, that when she has 4 of these said passion stacks, she will gain a certain status which allows her to activate an additional status effect. This status effect for at least the first skill could very well make it so she decreases foes' attack and increase her own attack, while the status effect for the third skill here increases the damage dealt for skills. To know which one is going to be your main burst damaging skill here, you do want to pay attention to mainly the percentages, seeing that the first skill, which is the one that sets up everything, is 89.3%. Our highest damaging skill is obviously going to be the skill 3 at 90.8%. Depending if you're using a single targeter or an AoE damager, will depend if you go ahead and focus more on these. Single target skills usually have the higher percentage, but since we're playing with an AoE DPS, we don't really pay attention to this single target skill. We're usually going to pay attention to anything that is AoE based. If she was a single targeter, then we'd pay more attention to her single target move, but we're not going to go on that. So now we have at least the whole premise of this character. We're always going to be using AoE skills. We know that she's an AoE damager. She's going to deal the best with AoE type of movement. How do we know how her rotation does go? Well, we did explain it briefly, which was on her passive. As long as you have 4 passion stacks, she's going to deal the utmost damage with her skill 3, and that is what we want to go ahead and take a look at. But I've yapped a lot on this, so I know a lot of you guys aren't probably keeping track with that, so we're going to go ahead and go into the battle to really show this off. So I'm going to use the same team, and what we want to go ahead and look at is any fight that we can pretty much go into, which I'm going to use the Fire Revelation card set as a good testing ground here. We're going to use the same team, perfectly the same, and we obviously do know Wonder's going to go second. So what we would end up doing with this is we need to hit a certain amount of times with fire in order to proc off Ann's passive. Anyone can hit the fire related moves here and it will help out Ann, so just do keep that in mind. But remember, everyone else being like Leon and Key as well as our Wonder are going to be trying to make sure Ann can deal as much damage as possible. So what we will want to go ahead and do is on the first turn, we're going to go ahead and buff on Ann, giving her some attack percentage. Since we went first, obviously our DPS is going last, meaning all buffs and debuffs will already be applied, allowing our DPS to have the best footing. So on this one here, you could very well end up buffing with our, our Wonder, but seeing we're trying to build primarily Ann's whole set here, or build. Alright, so there was some noise outside, so I ended up having to actually immediately stop that and just reopen it here because that was very loud. But what I was in the middle of saying is when it does come down to Wonder, you can do 2 things here. You usually want to use the skill 3 on the first turn, especially if you're trying to get up on stacks for doing a 3-1 rotation. Now the way how her rotation can go is on the off chance that you don't have a lot of fire damage that you're doing on the first turn, you can very well just use the 1-3 rotation. Being by the next turn, not only will it line up with your buffs, but alongside of this here, it will be able to allow you to deal the 1-3 rotation over and over and get the most of your damage. But on the off chance that you are using Wonder to at least proc some fire at the first turn, you are able to do her skill 3 on the first turn, because this little fire down here will go ablaze. And how you know exactly what your counter is going to be is if you go ahead and kill or at least hit the person here, we see that she has 0 passion stacks. Well, if we end up hitting these 3 with a fire move, instead of it being 0, she should have around 3 of these said stacks here, in which we're going to go ahead and click her right now. Let's go ahead and check again. She has 3 of these stacks. Now remember, it only takes 4 stacks in order for her to be in that whole form that allows her to deal more damage. So for Kuretani here, he could very well use a skill 1 and still proc that said burn off, and then she'll have her stacks. But seeing that he is a AoE debuffer, we're going to go ahead and use his skill 2, giving us 3 more stacks for our Ann. This immediately allows us to proc off this flame down here, which we need 4 stacks for. And currently, if we can go ahead and take a look at that, we already reached the 4 stacks. We have the extra amount of stuff here, or the extra buff. So our passion stacks go back to 0. So on the off chance that you end up having the flame with Ann specifically, her rotation, which we did do with the actual fire and everything that we triggered, we can start off with the skill 3. But on the off chance that you don't do this, let's say we did not attack with we did not attack at all with Wonder, we actually buffed with Wonder, we will only have 3 passion stacks because we only used our AoE with Key once, meaning she would end up having to do her rotation differently. Instead of doing her most powerful move, you would end up using her setup move, which is the skill 1, and in the next turn she will have her enhanced move, which will be the skill 3. But since we ended up proccing this and we used her passive, we're going to use the skill 3. Skill 3 obviously is going to have a different animation, deal a lot more damage as you can see right there, and that is going to benefit you majorly. Now on the second turn, this is usually when you're getting your nabbies. This is usually when you're actually able to already do some of your buffs, so you can start doing things a little bit differently. On the off chance that you're using like Okion, or if you're using Rico, they're both going to help you out in a certain way that's going to be offensive. Rico herself, you want to start off with the skill 1, seeing it decreases the enemy's defense, which in terms is technically going to help out your damage overall. If you're using Okion, you're usually going to be buffing up your damage in general, and if you're using Puppet, you're probably giving yourself a defense buff, or at least a shield. So since we've used our skill 3 on the first turn, we now have the second turn. Now, the reason why we don't use this again inside of a team rotation is because if we check out the move, it says that it's active for 2 turns. So we still technically have our ultimate booster here for another turn. So on this turn instead, we probably use Justice Barrier. Now, Justice Barrier gives us something called Power of Friendship, in which if you start to know a lot more of your characters and know how they really work together, Power of Friendship is allowing our character being on to get extra attack up here. So if we go ahead and use Justice Barrier, we're able to get something called Power of Friendship, which is going to pop up right there. And all this does is give us a better base of attack here. If we check her out, she should have this right there, and she's getting an attack increase by 180. Now, it's only for 1 turn, so she is, of course, getting that small damage up for 1 turn, but it beats that. I would rather do that instead of going ahead and overlapping your buffs, seeing that overlapping your buffs means you're kind of wasting the turn. Now, on this option, if you wanted to, you could very well attack once again with Wonder. It does technically build up our on stacks to allow her to do this, but she's already at 3 stacks, so technically we don't even have to hit it all with Wonder triggering a fire attack. We could very well use a buff such as like Terukaja, Rebellion, or if Wonder has a debuff type of persona or a debuffing skill, somewhat to Tetra Shot here, or Tatra Shot here, you can use that instead. I'm gonna go ahead and use Tatra Shot because it has a good chance of marking the opponent, which by marking them, if we go ahead and check what that does, it decreases the defense by 26.9%. Now, normally since Mark, or at least that skill I just used, was a single target skill, you'd mainly use it with a single targeter. This is mainly just to show off what you can do. If you had a debuff skill that was AoE, that would have been way better, especially seeing that Ana is an AoE debuffer, or at least an AoE damager. So on this turn, you can do a couple things here. We now have our highlight. Highlights are also going to be a thing that you want to take into account on team rotations here. So either you can use a highlight from example, our Leon, to go ahead and give her a higher attack percentage buff. If you also use this, you may get some crit damage out of it too, and it's something that you're able to see whenever you're checking your characters. If we wanted to check this around here and look around, we're able to see that we're obviously getting some crit damage buffs down here, which is always going to help us out. And all of this can very well be something that maybe Leon does offer, or maybe the characters themselves offer. So when it does come down to our highlights, we can either use a debuffing highlight, make sure they take more damage. We can use a damaging highlight, which increases our fire damage for the next turn, or we can go ahead and just use a buffer highlight in total. Honestly, all 3 of these things aren't a wrong thing to do. It honestly comes down to you, and I'm just gonna go ahead and do a buff because this allows me to go ahead and just make sure she has an extra buff here, dealing overall more damage. So this in mind, we get more Power of Friendship stacks, we get our buff that we needed, and we can see that she is obviously getting more damage out of this. For Kurotani, seeing that obviously we need 1 more attack of fire here, we're gonna go ahead and use our skill 2, building up those fire stacks. And if we can go ahead and look at our on, one of the main things that we gotta notice is instead of it being at the 4 stacks that we needed the first turn, we now need them at 8 stacks. Reasoning for this is because we've already used our initial 4 stack amount. So once she hits the 8 stacks here, which currently we should be at 7, she will do her enhanced once again. Well, I guess we're at 5 since we didn't attack at all with Wonder. So once we do have this here, we'll be at around like 7 stacks once we attack with our on. So let's go ahead and use our skill 1, seeing that we have our setup. And then when it does go back around here, we're able to go ahead and put back on our status effects. Our actions have went again, meaning our team comp and our actual team rotation is going to change. We still do have our 1 turn of our debuff, so we can go ahead and use this turn to use all of our intel stacks, get up some HP, while also increasing our attack. So this is one thing I'm going to place on my on here, buffing my entire team, but also restoring my on's HP. So alongside of this, since we used our Justice Barrier, our ultimate booster is now gone. So we're gonna go ahead and refresh this buff. Using our Elise team rotation immediately here, boom, we got the buff on there, meaning now she's getting that extra amount. Since we want to make sure she is going to trigger her extra turn, or at least her extra amount, this turn we're going to go ahead and attack with our Wonder. This is giving us obviously that extra status effect that we do need. So if we go ahead and look at on once again, she now has 9 passion stacks. And if we use Kuretani's skill 2, she's going to have more than that, meaning she's now going to be back in her enhanced damage mode. We go ahead and check at least what she's able to do here, which she's getting knocked on the ground at the moment. If we're able to check at least what she does here, you can immediately see she now has a flame buyer and we have our highlight back. So there's 2 things you can do. Seeing that this is her main damage round, you could very well use her skill 3 after her highlight because it does amplify her damage, or you can use Ki that also will amplify her damage. This does amplify fire damage by 73.6% for 1 whole turn, but this one itself amplifies your damage by 19.7% to the foes. So it's honestly up to you. Neither one is wrong once again here, but of course, depending on your situation, you will use one another. But we are at our team rotation, and this is the correct rotation. So obviously, we're back on skill 3, landing on this, meaning we can deal the most damage we can deal. Once again, showing us we have that lovely looking animation there and dealing the most damage we can deal. So team rotations are going to be distinctively different. Okay, they're never going to be exactly the same. An luckily is one of the few characters that can be technically qualified as a 2 rotation character. She's always going to be using skill 3, skill 1, skill 3, skill 1, while there's other DPSs that can go down the list. Hopefully this was able to clarify a little bit of how things does work here. When notifying exactly how your rotations are going to go, you will need to know how your team does correlate together and exactly how the main DPS does work. It gets even more confusing when you add another DPS to the mix, so try to avoid that. But without further ado, that's some of the basics of how a team rotation does go down and how to prep it, as well as your team comps. If you didn't like it, or if you did like it, or if you didn't, still leave a like, leave a dislike, whatever you want to do here. Drop a comment, and of course share the video around. It really does make my day when I see you guys actually comment as well. So thank you guys for a lot of the support. We're going to start doing the individual rotations and individual rotation videos very soon, so look forward to that as well. But till then, everybody, peace out.